Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the second chapter of Al-Raheeq Al-Makhtum, otherwise known as the Sealed Nectar. Alhamdulillah, this time around I found a color copy of the PDF, which is freely accessible online, so I'll be including that link in this video. So, Bismillah, we can start with rule and government among the Arabs. When talking about the Arabs before Islam, we see that it is necessary to outline the history of rule, government, sectarianism, and the religious domination of the Arabs to facilitate the understanding of the emergent circumstances when Islam appeared. When the sun of Islam rose, rulers of Arabia were of two kinds: crowned kings who were in fact not independent, and heads of tribes and clans who enjoyed the same authorities and privileges possessed by crowned kings and were mostly independent, though some of them may have shown some kind of submission to a crowned king. The crowned kings were those of Yemen and those of Sham, which is ancient geographical Syria, the family of Ghassan, and the monarchy of Hira. All the other rulers of Arabia were not crowned. Rule in Yemen. In Yemen, the people of Sheba were one of the oldest known nations of the pure Arabs. They have been mentioned in records as early, as the 25th century CE, according to excavation undertaken at Ur. Their civilization flourished and their domain spread in the 11th century CE. It is possible to divide their ages to the following estimation. From 1300 to 620 BC, the nation was known as Ma'iniyya, during which their kings were called Makrib Sheba. Their capital was Sarwah, also known as Khariba, whose ruins lie approximately 50 kilometers northwest of Ma'rib and 142 kilometers east of Sana'a. During this period, they began building the Dam of Ma'rib, which had great importance in the history of Yemen. Sheba had so great a domain that they established colonies within and outside Arabia. From 620 BC to 115 BC. During this era, their nation was known by the name Sheba. They left the name Makrib and assumed the designation of kings of Sheba. They also made Ma'rib their capital instead of Sarwah. The ruins of Ma'rib lie at a distance of 192 kilometers east of Sana'a. From 115 BC until 300 CE. During this period, the nation became known as Himyariya the first after the tribe of Himyar conquered the kingdom of Sheba, making Redan their capital instead of Ma'rib. Later on, Redan was called Zifar. Its ruins still lie on Mudawwar mountain near the town of Yarim. During this period, they began to decline in trade and power that eventually led to their downfall. Their trade failed to a great extent, firstly because of the Nabatean domain over northern Hijaz, secondly because of the Roman superiority over the naval trade routes after the Roman conquest of Egypt, Syria, and northern Hijaz, and thirdly because of the intertribal warfare. Due to the three above-mentioned factors, the family of Qahtan remained disunited and scattered about from 400 CE until Islam dawned in Yemen. During this period, the nation was known as Himyariya II, and it witnessed increasing disorder and turmoil, followed by civil rebellion and outbreaks of tribal wars, rendering the people of Yemen liable to foreign subjugation and hence loss of independence. During this era, the Romans conquered Aden and even helped the Abyssinians, Ethiopians, occupy Yemen for the first time in 340 CE. Making use of the constant intra-tribal conflict in Hamdan and Himyar, the Abyssinian Ethiopian occupation of Yemen lasted until 378 CE, after which Yemen regained its independence. Later, cracks began to show of the Ma'rib Dam, which led to the Great Flood, which happened during 450 or 451 CE, mentioned in the Noble Quran. This was a great event, which caused the fall of the entire Yemeni civilization and the dispersal of the nations living therein. In 523 CE, a Jewish ruler named Dhu Nawas, launched a devastating campaign against the Christians of Najran in order to force them to convert to Judaism. Having refused to do so, they were thrown alive into a big ditch where a great fire was lit. The Quran refers to this event. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قتل أصحاب الأخدود. Cursed were the people of the ditch. This aroused great wrath among the Christians, especially the Roman emperors who not only instigated the Abyssinian Ethiopians against the Arabs, but also assembled a large fleet of 70,000 warriors, which helped the Abyssinian Ethiopian army to bring about a second conquest of Yemen in 525 CE, under the leadership of Ariat. He was granted rulership over Yemen, a position he held until he was assassinated by one of his army leaders, Abraha. After reconciliation with the king of Abyssinia, Abraha gained rulership over Yemen and later on deployed his soldiers to attempt to demolish Al-Kaaba. And hence, he and his soldiers came to be known as the people of the elephant. In 575 CE, after the incident of the people of the elephant, the people of Yemen, under the leadership of Mahdi Karib bin Saif Duyazin al-Himyari, and through Persian assistance revolted against the Abyssinian Ethiopian invaders, regained independence, and appointed Mahdi Karib as their king. However, Mahdi Karib was assassinated by some of his Abyssinian Ethiopian servants. The family of Duyazin was thus deprived of royalty forever. Kisra, the Persian king, appointed a Persian ruler over Sana'a and thus made Yemen a Persian colony. Persian rulers maintained rulership of Yemen until Badan, the last of them, embraced Islam in 638 CE, thus ending the Persian dominion over Yemen. Rulership in Hira. Ever since Quraysh the Great, who was from 557 to 529 BC, united the Persians, they ruled over Iraq and its neighboring areas. Nobody could displace their authority until Alexander the Great vanquished their king Dara I and thus subdued the Persians in 326 BC. Persian lands were thenceforth divided and ruled by kings known as the kings of sects, an era that lasted until 230 CE. Meanwhile, the Qahtanians occupied some Iraqi territories and were later followed by some Adnanians who managed to share some parts of Mesopotamia with them. The Persians, under the leadership of Ardashir, who had established the Sasanian state in 226 CE, regained enough unity and power to subdue the Arabs living in the vicinity of their kingdom, and forced the Qudaa tribe to leave for Syria, leaving the people of Hira and Anbar under the Persian domain. During the time of Ardashir, Jathima al-Wadda exercised rulership over Hira and the rest of the Iraqi desert area, including Rabi'a and Mudar in Mesopotamia. Ardashir reckoned that it was impossible for him to rule the Arabs directly and prevent them from attacking his borders unless he appointed one of them who enjoyed the support and power of his tribe as a king. He had also seen that he could make use of them against the Byzantine kings who persistently harassed him. At the same time, the Arabs of Iraq could face the Arabs of Syria, who were under the hold of Byzantine kings. However, he deemed it fit to keep Persian battalion under the command of the king of Hira to be used against those Arabs who might rebel against him. Excuse me. After the death of Jathima, and during the era of Kisra Sabur bin Ardashir, Amr bin Adi bin Nasr al-Lakhmi was ruler of Hira and Anbar from 268 to 288 CE. The Lakhmi kings remained in rule of Hira until the Persians appointed Qabaz bin Fayruz, in whose reign appeared someone called Mazdak, who called for dissoluteness in social life. Qabaz and many of his subjects embraced Mazdak's religion and even called upon the kings of Hira. Al-Mundhir bin Ma'us Sama was from 512 to 554 CE to follow suit. When the latter, because of his pride and self-respect, rejected their call, Qabaz discharged him and nominated Harith bin Amr bin Hajar al-Kindi, who had accepted the Mazdak doctrine. No sooner did Kisra Anushirwan succeed Qabaz than he, due to the hatred of Mazdak's philosophy, killed Mazdak, and many of his followers, restored Mundhir to the throne of Hira, and gave orders to summon under arrest Harith, who sought refuge with Al-Kalb tribe, where he spent the rest of his life. The sons of Al-Mundhir bin Ma'us Sama maintained kingship a long time until Al-Nu'man bin Al-Mundhir took over. Because of a calumny borne by Zayd bin Adi al-Abbadi, the Persian king got angry at An-Nu'man and summoned him to his palace. An-Nu'man went secretly to Hani bin Mas'ud, chief of Shayban tribe, and left his wealth and family under the latter's protection, and then presented himself before the Persian king, who immediately threw him into prison until his death. Kisra then appointed Iyas bin Qubaysa at-Tai as king of Hira. Iyas was ordered to tell Hani bin Mas'ud to deliver An-Nu'man's charge up to Kisra. No sooner had the Persian king received the fanatically motivated rejection on the part of the Arab tribe, he declared war against the tribe of Shayban. He mobilized his troops and warriors under the leadership of King Iyas to a place called Dhiqar, which witnessed a most furious battle wherein the Persians were severely routed by the Arabs for the first time in history. They say that this occurred very soon after the birth of Prophet Muhammad SAW, 8 months after Iyas bin Qubaysa's rise to power over Hira. After Iyas, a Persian ruler named Azaddaba. Oh my God, Azaddaba. After Iyas, a Persian ruler named Azaddaba was appointed over Hira, ruling for 17 years from 614 to 631 CE, after which the authority returned to the family of Lakham when Al-Mundhir al-Ma'rur took over. Hardly had the latter's reign lasted for 8 months when Khalid bin al-Walid fell upon him with Muslim soldiers. Rulership in geographical Syria. During the tribal emigration, some branches of the Qudaa tribe reached the borders of geographical Syria, where they settled down. They belonged to the family of Sulay bin Halwan, of whose offsprings were sons of Daj'am bin Sulay, known as Ad-Daja'ima. The tribes of Qudaa were used by the Byzantines in defense of the Byzantine borders against both Arab Bedouin raiders and the Persians. A king was put in charge of them. One of their most famous kings was Ziyad bin al-Abula. They enjoyed autonomy for a considerable phase of time that lasted from the beginning of the 1st century to near the end of the 2nd century CE. Their authority, however, was ended upon defeat by the Ghassanids, who were consequently granted the proximity rulership over the Arabs of Syria and had Dumatul Jandal as their headquarters, which lasted until the Battle of Yarmouk in the year 13 AH. The last king, Jabala bin al-Ayhum, embraced Islam during the reign of the chief of believers, Umar bin al-Khattab. Rulership in Hijaz. Ismail alayhi salam administered authority over Mecca as well as custodianship of the Kaaba throughout his lifetime. Upon his death at the age of 137, 2 of his sons succeeded him, Nabit, then Qaidar. It is also said that they were opposite in order. Later on, their maternal grandfather, Mudad bin Amr al-Jurhumi, took over, thus transferring rulership over Mecca to the tribe of Jurhum, preserving a venerable position. Very little authority remained for Ismail's sons, even though they held a sacred status since it was their father who built the Kaaba. Time passed without the situation of the children of Ismail alayhi salam changing, until the rule of Jurhum declined prior to the invasion of Bukhta-Nassar. The political role of the Adnanids had already be, excuse me, the political role of the Adnanids had begun to gain firmer ground in Mecca, which could be clearly attested by the fact that upon Bukhta-Nassar's first invasion of the Arabs in Dhati Irq, the leader of the Arabs was from the Adnanids, not from Jurhum. Upon Bukhta-Nassar's second invasion in 587 CE, however, the Adnanids were frightened out to Yemen, while the Israelite proclaimed Prophet Burkhiyah fled to Syria from Harran with Ma'ad. But when Bukhta-Nassar's pressure lessened, Ma'ad returned to Mecca to find none of the tribe of Jurhum except Jursham bin Jalhama, whose daughter Mu'ana was given to Ma'ad as a wife. She later had a son by him named Nidar. On account of the difficult conditions and poverty prevalent in Mecca, the tribe of Jurhum began to treat visitors to the Kaaba poorly and seized its funds by force. This aroused resentment and hatred of the Adnanids, sons of Bakr bin Abd Manaf bin Kinana. They, with the help of the tribe of Khuza'ah that had come to settle in a neighboring area called Mar al-Zahran, invaded Jurhum and chased them out of Mecca. Rulership was left to Khuza'ah in the middle of the 2nd century CE. Upon leaving Mecca, Jurhum filled up the well of Zamzam, leveled its place, and buried a great many things in it. Amr bin al-Harith bin Mudad al-Jurhumi was reported by Ibn Ishaq to have buried the 2 gold deer of the Kaaba together with the black stone in the Zamzam well. After sealing it up, he and those with him escaped to Yemen. Ismail's period is estimated to have lasted for 20 centuries BC. It means that Jurhum stayed in Mecca for 21 centuries and held rulership there for about 20 centuries. Upon defeat of Jurhum, the tribe of Khuza'ah monopolized rulership over Mecca. Mudar tribes, however, enjoyed 3 privileges. First, leading pilgrims from Arafah to Muzdalifah and during the rites at Mina on the day of sacrifice. This was the authority of the family of Al-Ghawth bin Murrah, descendants of Ilyas bin Mudar, who were called Sufa. This privilege meant that the pilgrims were not allowed to throw stones at Al-Aqaba until one of the men of the Sufa did so. When they finished stoning and wanted to leave the valley of Mina, the Sufa men stood on the 2 sides of Al-Aqaba, and nobody would pass that position until the men of Sufa passed and cleared the way for the pilgrims. When the Sufa perished, the family of Sa'ad bin Zayd Manat from the Tamim tribe inherited the responsibility. Second, Al-Ifada, leaving for Mina after Muzdalifah on the morning of the sacrifice, and this was the responsibility of the family of Adwan. Third, postponement of the sacred months, and this was the responsibility of the family of Tamim bin Adi from Bani Kinana. Khuza'ah's reign in Mecca lasted for 300 years, during which the Adnanids spread all over Najd and the sides of Bahrain and Iraq. While small branches of the Quraysh remained on the sides of Mecca, there were Halul, Sarim, and some other families of Kinana. They enjoyed no privileges over Mecca or the sacred house until the appearance of Qusay bin Kilab. Qusay's father is said to have died when he was still a baby, and his mother subsequently married Rabi'a bin Haram from the tribe of Bani Udhra. Rabi'a took his wife and her baby to his homeland on the borders of Syria. When Qusay became a young man, he returned to Mecca, which was ruled by Hulayl bin Habsha from Khuza'ah, who gave Qusay his daughter Hubba as wife. After Hulayl's death, a war between the Khuza'ah and the Quraysh broke out, resulting in Qusay taking hold of Mecca and the sacred house. The rules of this war have been illustrated in three versions. First, due to the influence and multiplicity of his offspring, increase of his property, and exaltation of his honor after Hulayl's death, Qusay considered himself more entitled than the tribes of Khuzaa and Bani Bakr to shoulder the responsibility of rulership over Mecca and custodianship of the sacred house. He also advocated that the Quraysh were the chiefs of Ismail's descendants. He consulted Quraysh and Kinana to expel Khuzaa and Bani Bakr from Mecca, and they supported him. Second, the Khuzaa claimed that Hulayl requested Qusay to hold custodianship of the Kaaba and rulership over Mecca after his death. Third, Hulayl gave the right of Kaaba service to his daughter Hubba and appointed Abu Ghubshan al-Khuzai to function as her agent thereof. Upon Hulayl's death, Qusay bought this right for a leather bag of wine, which aroused dissatisfaction among the men of the Khuzaa, and they tried to keep the custodianship of the sacred house away from Qusay. The latter, however, with the help of Quraysh and Kinana, managed to take over and even expel Khuzaa completely from Mecca. Whatever the truth might have been, the entire affair resulted in Sufa being deprived of their privileges. The excavation of Khuzaa and Bakr from Mecca, the transfer of rulership over Mecca and custodianship of the holy sanctuary to Qusay. The matter was resolved after fierce wars between Qusay and Khuzaa, inflicting heavy casualty on both sides, reconciliation and then arbitration of Ya'mud bin Auf from the tribe of Bakr. His judgment entailed eligibility of Qusay's rulership over Mecca and custodianship of the sacred house. Qusay's absolution of responsibility for the bloodship of Khuzaa and imposition of blood money on Khuzaa and Banu Bakr. Qusay's reign over Mecca and the sacred house began in 440 CE and allowed him and the Quraysh after him absolute rulership over Mecca and undisputed custodianship of the sacred house, to which Arabs from all over Arabia came to pay homage. Qusay brought his kinspeople to Mecca and allocated it to them, allowing Quraysh some dwellings there. An-Nus'a, the families of Safwan, Adwan, Murrah bin Auf, preserved the same rights they used to enjoy before his arrival. A significant achievement credited to Qusay was the establishment of a Nadwa house, an assembly house, on the northern side of Al-Kaaba to serve as a meeting place for the Quraysh. This was very beneficial for the Quraysh because it secured unity of opinions amongst them and cordial solutions to their problems. Qusay enjoyed the following privileges of leadership and honor. Number one, presiding over Nadwa house meetings. Consultations related to serious issues were conducted there and marriage contracts were announced. Number two, the war standard. There could be no declaration of war except with his approval or the approval of one of his sons. Number three, caravan leader. He was a commander of all caravans. No caravan from Mecca could depart, be it for trade or otherwise, except under his authority or the authority of one of his sons. Number four, doorkeeper of the Kaaba. He was the only one eligible to open his gate and was responsible for its service and protection. Number five, providing water for the pilgrims. They would fill basins sweetened with dates or raisins for the pilgrims visiting Mecca to drink. Number six, feeding pilgrims. This means making food for pilgrims who could not afford it. Qusay even imposed an annual land tax for food on the Quraysh, paid at the season of pilgrimage. It is noteworthy, however, that Qusay singled out Abd Manaf, a son of his, for honor and prestige, though he was not his eldest son, who was Abdud Dar, and entrusted him with such responsibilities such as chairing the meetings at An-Nadwa house, custody of the standard, the doorkeeping of Al-Kaaba, providing water and food for pilgrims. Due to the fact that Qusay's actions were regarded as unquestionable and his orders inviolable, his death did not give rise to conflicts amongst his son. However, no sooner had Abd Manaf died, fierce infighting began between his sons and their cousins, the sons of Abd Dar, which would have given rise to further conflicts and strifes amongst the whole tribe of Quraysh, had it not been for a peace treaty. Thereby the posts were reallocated to reserve the rights of feeding and providing water for pilgrims for the sons of Abd Manaf, while An-Nadwa house, custody of the standard and doorkeeping of Al-Kaaba were maintained for the sons of Abd Dar. The sons of Abd Manaf, however, cast lots for their charge. Consequently, they left the charge of providing food and water to Hashim bin Abd Manaf, upon whose death the charge was to be taken over by his brother Al-Muttalib bin Abd Manaf. After him, it was taken by Abdul Muttalib bin Hashim, the Prophet ﷺ's grandfather. His sons assumed this position until the rise of Islam, during which Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib was in charge. Many other posts were distributed among the Quraysh for establishing the pillars of a new quasi-democratic state, with government offices and councils similar to those today. Some of these posts are enumerated as follows. Number 1, casting lots for the idols was allocated to Bani Juma. Number 2, keeping record of offers and sacrifices, settlement of disputes and relevant issues were to lie in the hands of Bani Saham. Number 3, consultation was to go to Bani Asad. Number 4, organization of blood money and fines was with Bani Tayyim. Number 5, bearing the national banner was with Bani Umayyah. Number 6, the military institute, footmen, and cavalry would be the responsibility of Bani Makhtum. Number 7, Bani Adi would function as foreign ambassadors. Rulership in Pan-Arabia. We have previously mentioned the Qahtanid and Adnanid emigrations and division of Arabia between these two tribes. The tribes dwelling near Hira were subordinate to the Arabian king of Hira, while those dwelling in the Syrian deserts were under the domain of the Ghassanids, a dependency that was in reality formal rather than actual. However, those living in the far-off desert areas enjoyed full autonomy. These tribes, in fact, had heads chosen by the whole tribe, which was a demi-government based on tribal solidarity and collective interests in defense of land and property. Heads of tribes enjoyed dictatorial privileges similar to those of kings and were rendered full obedience and subordination in both war and peace. Rivalry amongst cousins for rulership, however, often drove them to outdo one another in entertaining guests, affecting generosity, wisdom, and chivalry for the sole purpose of outranking their rivals and gaining fame among people, especially poets who were the official spokesmen at the time. The head of a tribe and its chief had special claims to spoil of war, such as 1/4 of the spoils, whatever he chose for himself or found on his way back, or even the remaining undivided spoils. So that concludes this chapter of the Sealed Nectar, and in the next video we'll look at the political situation. فجزاك الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.